Open system interconnection, also known as the OSI model, describes the 7 layers that computer systems use to communicate over a network. And it was widely adopted by computer and telecommunication companies in the 1980s. And it's extremely helpful for network professionals today in visualizing what goes on in a network and helps ease the burden of troubleshooting network problems. Even though in the modern world today, the internet is not based on the OSI model. Rather, we have a simpler model, which is the TCP/IP model, where we look at the network, the internet, the transport, and the application layer. The OSI model, however, is still widely used, and it is important for you as someone trying to break into the cybersecurity or networking field to understand this, because it majorly sets a strong foundation upon which other complex network concepts can be built on. Now, the advantages of OSI model can be looked at from different perspectives. From the user and operators of computers, like we said, it helps them to troubleshoot network problems and identify which network layer has an issue. Then for the network device manufacturers and networking software vendors, it helps them create devices and softwares that can communicate with products from any other vendor. So it allows for open interoperability because of the standard communication principle. Now, personally, I like to look at the OSI model from the bottom top approach. And when we look at this bottom top approach, we look at the physical layer and we look at the data link layer next, the network, the transport, the session, the presentation, and the application layer. Most times people basically just do acronyms for this so that it's usually easier to remember. So you could basically come up with your own personal acronym that you internalize and not forget easily. Now, when we look at the physical layer basically talks about the physical structure. These are things that we can see, right? And we talk about data cables, we talk about fibers, we talk about hubs, and they're responsible for the transmission of raw data, which is simply a series of zeros and ones. Next, we have the data link layer, and it helps to break up packets into frames and sends these packets from the source to destination. It's composed of two parts. We have the logical link control and the MAC. The logical link controls helps in identifying network protocols and performing error checking and synchronizing frames, while the media access control uses MAC addresses to connect devices and define permissions to transmit and receive data. The network layer, which is the third, has two main functions, and one is it breaks up segments into network packets and reassembles the packets on the receiving end, and the other is the routing. So in this layer we have the IP and we have the route. In the transport layer, it reassembles the segments on the receiving end and turns it back into data that can be used by the session layer. And here it does error control. It checks if the data was received incorrectly, and if it wasn't received, it requests for it to be sent again. And here we have the TCP and we have the UDP. The session layer creates communication channels called sessions between devices, and is responsible for opening sessions and ending them, that they remain open as and when due, and make sure they're functional when the data is being transferred, and so on and so forth. The presentation layer is helpful because it prepares data for the application layer. It defines how two devices should encode, encrypt, and compress data so it is received correctly on the other end. Here we talk about the SSL, the SSH, the FTP, and the JPEG, or whatever format that you could take. Then the application layer is used by the end user software such as web browsers and email clients, and it provides protocols that allow software to send and receive information and present meaningful data to users. And in this session, or in this layer, pardon me, we have the HTTP, we have the FTP, we have the POP and SMTP. Like I said earlier, the modern internet is now based on TCP/IP model these days, but that does not make the OSI model obsolete, as it is still widely used by computer and telecommunication companies. And I really hope this video was helpful for you in understanding the OSI model.